Friends, here on this day, we gather to celebrate and remember Sylvia's life. There are so many stories that are represented in this space, so many different ways that you knew her beautiful artistic talents, the beauty that she brought to the world, the beauty that will continue to inspire us not just this day, but all the days of our lives as we remember her deep and beautiful legacy. This is a space of celebration, of mourning that she is no longer here with us in body, but in celebrating that her spirit remains with us each time we see the beauty of a flower or beautifully curated garden, or stand in line to see art that inspires in freezing cold weather. We celebrate her life this day. In just a moment, I will light a candle in remembrance of the light that she brought to this world and to each one of us. Friends, this day, our hope is that this is a space of story sharing, of remembrance, of celebrating Sylvia through music and through stories during the reception. Let us remember now the light that she brought to each of our lives. We hear now the music from Laura's theme, played by Sophia. Friends, in just a moment, you will hear from Peter and Sabina and Karsten, words of remembrance and celebration, words of hope as we hold Sylvia's legacy in our hearts and in our minds. I have to say that I only got to know her through stories and through pictures, but what amazing stories and pictures they were. As we were going through the video yesterday that will be shown over in the reception, each picture had an amazing story, whether it was dancing or playing the castanets or painting or sharing a beverage or two or celebrating over a good meal or being surrounded by so many plants in the kitchen, in the garden, in other people's gardens. I was just amazed by Sylvia's life. I was amazed by the love that her and Peter shared and continue to share. I was amazed how love flowed out, both in tears and in laughter. And I was amazed about her riding the elephant and the camel, too. Y'all aren't nearly as amazed as I was at that. I was also deeply amazed by the stories of empathy and care, the ways that her heart broke for those in Ukraine, the ways that she showed up. I saw that heartbreak in the poetry that is displayed in the reception, and the ways that she just kept showing up in love and in care. But y'all know these stories more than I do. Maybe some of you all were ones who I heard stories about. You see, she supported so many people with her deep empathy and love, supporting folks through some of their hardest days in their life because that was just what you did. She felt so deeply the love for neighbors and friends and nature and the stargazer lilies and her family. You see, I only got to know her through stories, but they were such beautiful, incredible, inspirational stories. And I know, like each one of you, my life has been changed by Sylvia's life. As we were talking about what today might look like, the spirit of celebration kept coming up. How we didn't want any particular somber music, but music instead that she might have danced to and that she did dance to. Music that she might have played and did play to. Music she might have been at celebrations with you. Music that inspired her. I was also amazed by her love of poetry. And you see a poem by one of her favorite poets, Khalil Gibran, on the back of today's bulletin. And I invite you to let those words inspire you not just this day, but in all the days to come. Sylvia was quick-witted and beautiful and beautifully empathetic. She was inspirational. And she was and is always going to be someone who amazes each one of us. I was amazed by her professional work. I was amazed by the ways in which there were so many multitudes in her life. How she brought so much beauty to the world, traveling so many places. But friends, y'all know her stories more than I do. You are here because part of her travels in your heart and your mind. Part of you will continue to be inspired by her love, by her creativity, by that interesting and amazing life, by the ways that she traveled so many different places that I had to ask each time, where is this picture taken? And it was never somewhere just right down the street, but always across the world. So friends, here in this space, let us now hear stories from those who knew her best, that they may continue to inspire us and get to know her more deeply and in different ways.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for the heartfelt, thoughtful words you wrote to me. Sylvia would have been touched very much as she had touched all of you. Let me share a few words from my side about Sylvia. I'm afraid I will tear up. And so I have Sabine at my side and have my Carsten son to keep me on track. Sabine always has steadied me. Carsten has kept me on track whenever I needed to. He knows something about tracks. He's a marathon runner, ultra marathon for that matter. So he goes the distance. Sylvia. Sylvia was Sylvia. She was Sylvia. She was life. She was embracing. She was loving. She was exuberant. She was radiant. And our pastor expressed this so much more eloquent than I ever could. I will be wooden, I'm afraid. I'm not in for a flourish. I'm not in the mood. And I will tell you what I feel. Sylvia reached out to people. She helped people. She had a sense of humor. She was fun. But there was not always sunshine on her side. She at times was cross with herself. She doubted her own self-worth. And she was not able to reach out to her as much as she has reached out to others. She has helped people. She has helped people in distress and in pain. She actually saved lives. She saved lives. That was Sylvia. So how did it all begin? How did it all begin? How did we meet? The chances in this were about a trillion, if that. We met at the National University in Mexico. Sylvia was on a break from her journey in Vietnam. Her brother had bought her a ticket just so that she would see something else. And I was on study leave from my job at the university in Frankfurt at the Faculty of Economics. And so we sat across each other, across the aisle, and kind of looking at each other, glancing at each other from time to time, sheepishly. Sylvia was always fast. So when she came home, she told her parents, I met my future husband. Oh, no kidding, no kidding. She asked me later what was my first impression. I said, and that's true, great legs. That impression stayed with me. It stayed with me. But it was overpowered by fundamentals. I got to know Sylvia during our rides to the university. She drove her father's car. I got to know who Sylvia was, what she stood for. And when I read her dedication to a book of poems of Khalil Gibran, it sealed it for me. It sealed it for me. Wow. So I was never as fast as Sylvia, and I always thought that I would have to know a woman for years, even before considering marriage. Why? On Christmas, I was back in Mexico. I asked her parents for Sylvia's hand. We got engaged. 6 months later, we got married in Darmstadt, in my hometown in Germany. We were sure of ourselves, of course, but we renewed our vows in Mexico a second time. We married again. And so we were settled. Now, what would we do now? What we do now? The United States of America came in just right, straddled in a way between Mexico and Germany. So we went to where do we went to? Huh? Warden. Always close in my mind and then forget it. And I hope I will be enlightened by this light here. So I was on a scholarship to do my PhD at Wharton. We started off on a fantastic note. We were made then parents of undergraduate female students. The bonus, we had an apartment, and we had our own kitchen. And this apartment, and where the dorm where the girls lived, where the students lived, was in a stylish Victorian house, right on Bruce Street, on Locust Street, right in the middle of campus. 5 minutes by walk and less to Wharton. So Sylvia made a reputation as a den mother, up to the echelons of the Penn administration. And she used that time well. She got sit-in privileges in a philosophy class, and she took jiu-jitsu courses. And that was quite something. It was something to be featured in a bulletin of the university with her, and you see the picture, having a hand on the jiu-jitsu teacher. During the day, she sat next to me in the library, going voraciously through expert language dictionaries. She wanted to expand her vocabulary for interpretation. In the night, she sat next to me and punched key cards with instructions of my model and with data, all to be fed in the computer. These were the times. Stacks of keypads, punch holes. And she had punched my dissertation. It was virtually completed. What was not completed was my model. It was also completed, but I could not get meaningful results out of it. It was complex. It was a mixed integer model. It was cutting edge at the time, and I had cut myself over the edge with it. I did not get the result I needed, hence no dissertation. Goodbye to the dissertation. The World Bank was a tough place, and he said, now you come. I did not have time to follow up on this. So I said goodbye to my dissertation. I was, of course, heartbroken. Not heartbroken, I'm heartbroken with Sylvia. I was down. But Sylvia said, look, we had such a good time. We had such a fantastic time. And indeed, we had a fantastic time. So the World Bank was tough. I worked 10 hours a day and the weekends. Little time left. Sylvia raised 2 children. She got a degree in clinical psychology. She helped women cope with domestic violence pro bono. And she worked, not pro bono, as an interpreter during court cases. Now, the World Bank was a tough place, but it was also a most generous place. It gave us time for vacation. And so we went on the most fabulous trips with our kids, with my parents, and mostly the 2 of us, à deux. We always traveled together, never in groups, never ever. We figured it out ourselves, we, meaning Sylvia, and we just wanted to be with each other, enjoy the beauty of life together, nobody else except our family. And when the going got tough, Sylvia got me out of it. So what did we do? Well, we went down 700 kilometers on the Yangtze, this massive magic river in China, from Chongqing to Three Gorges, where they was just building the reservoir for what was to become the largest hydroelectric power station in the world. We went into stone's throwing range of the glaciers El Perito Moreno in Argentina, a massive glacier. We trekked over the tips of the Aletsch Gletscher, linked by a rope the three of us, and a guide, because it was treacherous. What else did we do?
Hot air balloons.
Oh yes, not to forget. Hot air, how can I forget hot air? So, and that is where Mahmoud and his lovely daughters come in. We cruised in hot air balloons over Cappadocia and saw these rock spires and the churches and the caves. Wonderful, and little kind of crevices. And we also flew over the pagodas in Badan in the morning light. The glimmer of the pagodas, a absolutely exhilarating experience. And we walked thousands of steps in Angkor Wat and walked kilometers. It's a huge, massive Buddhist, absolutely impressive monument. We did this to exhaustion. And so we enjoyed it, but we are always exhausted. And I now will move forward to Sylvia, specifically. She was never exhausted. She studied French at the Sorbonne, and she studied there also pantomime under Marcel Marceau, worldwide known, and theater under Jacques Lecoq. She also, what did she also do? Lots of things.
Lots of things. Day parties.
Oh yeah. She got her groundings in languages at the United Nations. She was a natural for languages. She was a natural punto, and that pertained to entertainment. She was the hostess of the mostess. 20 friends plus, no problem. She was the general. She organized everything herself. She cooked everything herself. And she gave orders. And I was of the good mind to follow. No questions asked. No questions asked. We had the most wonderful of New Year's Eve parties. Our two granddaughters, I have only one daughter.
That's a story for another time.
Our two granddaughters were the stars of the evening. And she made everybody dance. When we were all exhausted, in the wee hours after the last friends had left, Sylvia and I sat together with a glass of champagne, hen house, and talked about the wonderful things in life. Now, talking about the wonderful things of life, I forgot that Sylvia was my muse. I was her Pedrito. And Sylvia gave me the gift for life, the two wonderful children, loving children. And there are two wonderful granddaughters. Sylvia was the first to make them dance In fact, she infected them, I think. Infected's not the right word, but not the right word at all. She imbued them. Better, no? with a passion for dance and for art. She danced with them during New Year's party. She was happy. She was in her element. She followed her granddaughters every step. She was proud of them, of their accomplishment, as was I. So, Sylvia was not a born athlete. She was not a born athlete. But she didn't shy away from challenges, notably when it was for adventures with our kids. So she she sloped. Slalom would be really high, but she sloped down double diamonds in Copper, our favorite ski resort. And she swam laps faster than me. And she ran a 5K.
10K.
Huh?
10K.
She ran a 10K. How can I ever estimate my wife? Terrible. Thank you, Sabine.
You're welcome.
And she climbed or hiked up Mount Lenana with our kids in Kenya. Mount Lenana, the peak, is not a small mountain. 7 kilometers high, thin air, a 4-day trek. It started off with a mountain lion rummaging in a tent next to us. It ended up early on in the night, in bitter cold, climbing up over lava stone to the top. It was dark, pitch dark. We followed the headlights of our guides. We made it. Sylvia made it. She had black feet, black toes, blisters on her feet, and she didn't say a word. She was an example of courage and endurance to our kids who made it. And I think Sabina at the time was one of the very youngest who had ever climbed Mount Lenana.
Minus all the people that lived there, but that's okay.
They were not minor. And so then, what else do I have to
Our
say?
garden.
Oh, the garden, how could I forget? The garden, how could I forget? It was central to our life. The garden had been mud and weeds, and it became a canvas of painting for Sylvia. It is the result of hard work, optimism, and goodwill. It was the place for good time and the refuge for hard times. We built sitting areas for our friends to come, for breakfasts and for luncheons. And we gave them all names. And Sylvia wrote stories about all of them. Symbolism. There was a story, a history to everyone. every cafe. And then, of course, there were flowers. There were flowers. Flowers everywhere. Flowers of carloads of flowers there. And she put them there everywhere. And so we had light and life all the time we went into the garden.
She was adventurous.
Okay. You know, I talked about the flowers and all of this. And I forgot about the adventures of Sylvia. She always said that life started when she met me. When she met me. Not so. She had a life packed before she met me. She dove for treasures in a sunken galleon off the coast of Quintana Roo. Later, she was the only woman on the expedition. Skin Divers magazine featured her on the front page and the story of her inside. Later, she met Jeannie Clark. Jeannie Clark was the shark lady. She mounted sharks. A lady, the statue of Sabine. She mounted sharks. Stature does not mean courage and adventure. Does not mean courage and adventure. Jeannie later on became a professor at the University of Virginia.
Maryland.
Sorry, Maryland. And Maryland, yeah. And Sabine became her assistant. She accompanied Jeannie on many diving trips, among others to Micronesia. And Jeannie was a lifelong friend until her passing. Sylvia, they both loved each other. Beyond diving, there was Vietnam. After diving, there was Vietnam. Sylvia, and even before Vietnam, there was Japan. Sylvia toured Japan with a group of musicians, Mexican musicians. She was Miss Mexico. She danced. Sponsored on a tour by the Mexican Minister of Culture. She met Kei Chusachi, the owner and chairman at the time of Suntory Whiskey, may be familiar to you. Keichu invited her, grew fond of her, invited her to his house, which is very unusual in Japanese culture. He gave us 2 precious woodprints from his museum as our wedding gift. In Japan, Sylvia met To, a powerful senator in Vietnam. In Vietnam, women had a very important role to play. Most importantly, Mrs. To. Through Mrs. To, Sylvia met in Vietnam the president, the cabinet, the generals, all of them. Through these connections, she established a contact with Voice of America. Voice of America established a contact with her because she had all the information. Sylvia went to the battle zones, and she was invited on the US Constellation, the largest US aircraft carrier at the time. She came in style, by jet. She was held, when she came in, by these safety nets, and she was ejected when she left by catapult.
In the plane.
From the plane.
Yes.
From the in plane, all by jet, in style, all by jet. Sorry. Thank you.
And also it's during the Vietnam War.
Come on.
During the Vietnam War. This was during the Vietnam War.
That I forgot. That was Vietnam War.
Yeah, it was during
It
the Vietnam
was
War.
all during the Vietnam War. All during the Vietnam War, yes. And so the captain explained the the war strategy based on his aircraft carrier to her. She was in that foremost place on the carrier. And of course, Sylvia always knew how to ask intelligent questions. So he explained and explained. From there, it was to the Manila Conference, the Manila Summit Conference, the real highlight of her stay in Vietnam, in a way, next to the aircraft carrier. It was a summit organized by Ferdinand Marcos, the president of the Philippines, and the heads of state, of course, of Vietnam, and the heads of state of all the allied partners of the US were there. And I can only say they were in good company. Sylvia was the dame of honor of the wife of the vice president of Vietnam. So she was sitting right there. She went around and she got signatures on the first day postage envelope of the Manila Conference. She also went to President Johnson. And when he signed, he pushed his chair a little back and hit Sylvia on her leg. President Johnson apologized. Sylvia smiled at him, so she told me. And that was the story of the Manila Conference. It didn't end well, but her stay ended up very well. During the last years of her life, Sylvia embraced the arts. She wrote poems. She painted. She played or perfected her castanet players. She became a castanet concert player. The wife of Plácido Domingo, when she met, thought that might be a good idea for her to play with Plácido Domingo, a duet. She had met Plácido at the conservatory in Mexico. Well, of course, nothing came of it. But she played castanet in concert here. She also sculpted. And that is her unfinished business. Her guru and mentor, the gracious Goksin Carey, is here. Goksin offered to finish her sculptures. Heads of horses. And they will grace our Café de los Caballos when they are ready, and her husband Erchu will put it into the ground. So Sylvia was also and I forgot to say this, an adept horseback rider. She rode side saddle, not that easy. She rode it in charreadas in Mexico. I saw it. And of course, as the pastor mentioned, she rode also elephants. She rode dromedaries around the pyramids. Thank you, Mahmoud. And she rode bicycles. The highlight was bicycle hopping in the small islands in the Mekong Delta. She loved it, hopping from one island to the other. And you will see a picture of her when she disembarked from a bicycle, not in the islands, but at our place in Washington. And so the sculptures will be finished. Her poems, songs of protest, were published. And one of the songs was about the Ukraine. Sylvia was always for the rights, and she stood for rights. So Ukraine is among the examples. She protested in front of the White House, waved the flag. She protested in front of the Lincoln Memorial. She lip-sank national Ukrainian songs in front of the Russian embassy. And she unfurled the national banner of Ukraine in the second tier of the Kennedy Center, while the National Orchestra of Ukraine was playing. The players later saluted us. It was unusual. Even the kind of ushers in the Kennedy Center did not complain, because you're not allowed to hang anything. And that was the Ukraine.
How's Ukraine? Sumi.
And then, yeah, to her art, forward to her art. You see, I'm meandering a little bit, and this is why I have my daughter. She always puts me on the right track together with my son. So she transitioned in painting from watercolor to Japanese ink to gilding. And of course, she had the sculpting with Gokchin Carey. She won prizes, except for sculpting, that Gokchin won the prizes. She won prizes in all categories. Best of show and first prize. Her most memorable achievement was the National Sumi Award in Alabama, in Montgomery, Alabama. It was awarded by Keito Sachi. And it was not only the award, it was the laudatory rationale and explanation why he had awarded that prize to her. Now, Keito was not just anybody. He was the recipient of the Order of
National Treasure.
Order of National Treasure, thank you. Awarded by Akihito, the Emperor of Japan. Now, believe me, I do not want to end up with the Emperor of Japan. I want to conclude with a message to you, to her friends, to her family. Carpe diem. And with a message from me to you, keep Sylvia in her heart. Thank you.
Dad and Sabine, I love you so much. And the three of us are incredibly grateful that you're joining us today to celebrate my mom's life.
And I wouldn't be truthful if, can you hear me okay? Okay, this is probably better. Sorry, I should do this. For a guy who does a lot of public speaking, I really miffed on this one, didn't I? Okay, how's that? Is that better? Super. Just also try not to burn my... I'm going to scoot this over this way. I'm also trying to keep it lit. So this is high pressure right here. I'm trying to keep it lit. I would not be truthful if I said the last few weeks haven't been incredibly raw. Loss is complicated. Grief is hard. There's no playbook for any of this. And as we were talking through how we wanted to have this day go, and with your company and us and our family together, the invitation says celebration of life, and that's the idea, right? My mom was a big-hearted, funny person. We want today to reflect that, and we didn't want it to be heavy. And so there's a handful of things I'd like to share with you in memory of my mom and what she was like as a human being and how she moved through space in the world and just, quite frankly, who she was and the things that mattered to us and that were an example of, quite frankly, a life really, really well lived. And as my dad was, and there's a couple of details in this story I didn't actually know about how you met with Mom.
I
So,
always want to surprise you, Carsten.
no, that was clear. Fully successful. Fully successful. So everything has a beginning. And as my dad was sharing earlier, mine kind of started when my mom and dad met in Mexico and then shortly thereafter moved to the US to start their lives together and ultimately start a family. That's when I showed up. Now, I have to add, and this is something that my mom would get a kick out of right now, I was the blondest, most prototypical German-looking child you can ever imagine. Like if there is a picture of that next to that term in the dictionary, it's probably mine at around 3 years of age. Now, this has become a source of humor in our family over the years because, and Mom was always very keen to point out that at some point her Mexican genetics kicked in, and now you're looking at this instead of that. She took great delight in pointing that out, never stopped doing that. The three of us have spent a lot of time in the last couple of weeks talking and grieving and remembering, but also, and this is I think the point that I always come back to that's very comforting for me, we spent a lot of time smiling, sharing stories, and laughing. And that's kind of a through line in the stories that we're sharing about her today, and I'm sure the conversations that we'll have later. And we looked at so many pictures. So my mom took an intimidatingly large amount of pictures throughout the course of her life. I bet that most of your visual memories of her involve a camera in one hand. And so we looked through a lot of these pictures, and that was two things. That was both really hard and also very wonderful. And it very much shaped today and the stories we're telling. And one picture stood out to me tremendously, and I'm going to describe it briefly. I also have it with me in case anybody wants to see it later. I'm happy to show you. It's a small picture and it's faded, but it's of the three of us outside of the house in Southwest Street. And my parents immigrated to the US, and your first house here, in any circumstances, is a big deal, but when you're from somewhere else, and you're establishing your roots in this new place, it's not just a house, it's a home, and it's growing roots as you're living in it. And I should actually also add that in this picture, so this was, when did we move there, Dad? This would have been...
1988.
No, that's Hooking Road, Southwest.
Opened 1973.
74. And so I have to add, and you'll see this in the picture, peak 70s finery. My dad's got the bell bottoms. My mom has the high collar. And they look so happy and so proud of this house. This is now their house. And that image sticks with me tremendously. I'm getting a little bit of feedback, right? I'll move over this way. And there was something very distinct about that part in my childhood, that the three of us and then the four of us, when Sabine, you decided to grace us with your presence a few years later, when we were laying roots in this country where our roots as a family lay elsewhere, in Germany and in Mexico. And my mom was both the engine and the heart of that. Always was. And one of the, they teach you in public speaking classes that you should either say 3 things or 5 things, but 4 and 6 is bad. So I have 5 things that I want to share with you about my mom that really stuck with me, and that have qualities of hers that have really shaped me, and I think have resonated with you all, which is part of the reason why you're here today. These qualities are all interlinked, right? They're all part and parcel of who she was as a person, how she was, and how she moved through the world. The first part, and you'll see these resonate a lot in the stories that my dad shared in the vignettes there. Emma, what you shared with us earlier. She was endlessly curious. She loved to learn. Our house was filled with books at all times. Some of my earliest memories are of her just sitting somewhere, reading not this kind of book, because this didn't exist back then, but just her nose in a book, taking great pleasure out of learning. She was constantly reading, constantly absorbing things about the world around her. And my dad mentioned my mom's psychology degree. She went back, with all the other things going on, she goes back to school to get her degree in psychology. And so there were textbooks, clinical psychology, yeah, so textbooks everywhere, notebooks everywhere. There wasn't a single flat surface in our house that wasn't covered with Post-it notes. So if you had 3M stock at that time in the 80s, say thanks to my mom, because she took care of business for them. Another aspect is, and my dad talked about this a little bit, her art. Different media, different styles. She learned how to do those things. And I think she took more pleasure, I'm guessing, although we had a lot of conversations about this, she took more pleasure in learning how to make this art, in the process of making the art, at least as much pleasure as she did in the actual outcome of the work itself. And we brought a few things with us that you'll see later that are sort of emblematic of the different things that she did and worked on and was passionate about. The second thing I wanted to talk about was how damn hard she worked. She was, as my dad mentioned, a simultaneous interpreter. I, as a child, just knew that was my mom's job. I knew in theory what that was. Somebody says something in one language, there's a person in the middle, like my mom, who translates that into another language that a third person doesn't speak, and it goes back and forth like a ping pong ball. One day she took me to work. I was 8, maybe 9, and watching that happen in real time was wild. Never seen anything like that before. It wasn't clear to me that a human being was capable of this that fast. I like to think I'm pretty smart. My mom was brilliant, and she was not just super brilliant, but she also worked incredibly hard. I mentioned that, that a lot of our countertops were covered in books. They were also covered in textbooks, in dictionaries, in terminology. If she was working a nuclear disarmament treaty, well, guess what? She knew as much about that as anybody else in that treaty, and she knew all about it in multiple languages. And as a kid, I thought, that's just my mom's job. That's what she does for a living. And it was only later that it became clear to me that she kept everything running so seamlessly. All right, there was the household, there was raising us. We were a handful frequently, so that wasn't simple either. And then partnering with my dad and just kind of her career. And she made it look seamless, and it wasn't. It was just a tremendous amount of work. Then there was her love for the arts. We've talked about that a little bit, and there's a couple of stories that my dad's already covered, so I will kind of shorten that part. But I do want to say that there is, and this is another story, that she would never tire of sharing. I do remember this. We went to see the Nutcracker at the Kennedy Center. And I was maybe 6, 5. I loved the Nutcracker, always loved it. I mean, what a fabulous piece of art for a 5-year-old child. It's magic. And I'd noticed that the adults around me were, at certain points, standing up and clapping and saying bravo and just generally being enthusiastic about what was going on. I didn't realize that there's a protocol as to when we should do these things. That escaped me. I just saw everybody's excited and people are having a good time. So at some point, when the Spirit moved me, I stood up and with my chubby 5-year-old little hands, clapped them as hard and as loud as I could, yelled bravo at the top of my lungs, and then at some point realized there's one person standing in the Kennedy Center who isn't on stage, and it's me.
Hey, forget, your parents joined.
This is true. This is true. Yeah, no, I take that back. I take that back. So the 3 of us are clapping, and the
We would never leave you alone, guys.
I know you did. And this is actually, you bring my point home beautifully, because the thing my mom said to me after that I've thought about many times for many years is, she said, when you feel joy, don't hide it. And that is a very profound thing that I've chewed on and thought through for many, many years. I'll say the 4th thing, and that was, and my dad addressed this a little bit also, her empathy, her sense for social justice, and quite frankly, her kindness. There's that famous line from Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, who said, "Look for the helpers. There are always people willing to help." My mom was a helper, and she would jump in when there was a need, and that's just one of the ways she was wired. She had a very clear sense of right and wrong. She put her money and her mouth where that was. I wanted to share something that impressed the heck out of me and made me think a lot. I don't think Eva was 10. We were shopping in Giant Food. I'm with my mom, getting groceries, and some guy said something homophobic to somebody else. My mom lit him up. She's there with her kid. She's half the size of this guy, and she gave it to him. As well she should have, because it's not an okay thing to do. And this is how she was wired, right? She always helped. She wouldn't let those things slide. And there's a through line from all of that to what you said about your protesting together on behalf of Ukraine. And that's just how she was. And that's something that has influenced Sabine and I tremendously. I said I have 5. I had many more, but I will stick to 5. And the last one kind of ties everything else together. And it's her gift of joy, both of experiencing it and of giving it. She had this remarkable capacity to take pleasure in things. In her life with you, in small things like a sunrise, holding your hand, a crisp apple, like they mattered to her in ways that I frequently in my life have sort of lost touch with. And so that was always very, very inspired to me. She loved her garden, she loved the arts, she loved beauty in all its forms. And all 5 of these things have shaped me as a human being in ways that is becoming increasingly clear to me the older I get. I'm 52 now. These are things that are starting to click into place in a very meaningful way. Some of you pointed out my blue shoes earlier. All right, so I just want to make sure everybody can see these. So there is a distinct reason I'm wearing these. They were my mom's favorites. So every time I would see my parents, she'd laugh when I was wearing them, and she'd point at them, she'd be like, "Oh, I love the shoes." And every time I didn't wear them, she'd be like, "Look, where are my shoes?" So, Mom, I'm wearing these for you today. I love them too, but I think my mom loved them more. And those are sort of my 5 things about my mom that have really mattered deeply to me, and I think resonate with all of you as well. I'll close with a handful of thoughts. after my mom passed away, I spent a lot of time in my parents' house, meandering around kind of aimlessly. I get up early, and I'm just wandering around the house, trying to make sense of this all, trying to find some mooring and some bearing in all of this. And one of the places I gravitated towards was my mom's studio, of which we have pictures of, I think, Sabine, in the slideshow later. I mean, it is a glorious, chaotic, creative space. And, you know, I stood there looking at it, and I'm delighted at the finishing the sculpture idea, because I didn't know that at that time. As I'm looking, I noticed that there were unfinished artworks, right? There was a painting on an easel that was half gilded. It wasn't finished yet. There was one of the horse head sculptures that still, you know, the wires are sticking out of it. It's unfinished. And next to that, my mom's earbuds. She loved to listen to music when she was creating. And next to that, a half full, and I say half full and not half empty, glass of water. It looked like she had just stepped out to grab a cup of coffee and was coming back. And I stood there, and it's 4 in the morning, and I realized she wasn't, and I completely lost it. It hit me like a Mack truck. The fact that there was this unfinished work. And as things settled for me in that chaotic way that grief brings, a couple of things occurred to me. And one was that maybe an artist's work is never done. And maybe that's a good metaphor for life, that we are never actually really done with what we're doing. And in the case of my mom, I love the idea and the feeling that it gives me when I think about the fact that she was creating and being an artist until literally the day she passed away. That speaks to a life well lived, fully lived, and lived in the moment. I have one of my mom's business cards, not the one she used when she was working. That just said conference interpreter. This one has, on one side, a horse's head that she painted. We actually brought the artwork with us. It's in the area where we'll share some fellowship later. It's beautiful. You turn it around and it has 3 words: Sylvia, Scherer, artist. And my mom was an artist, not just in her paintings and in her sculptures, but kind of in the way she approached life, all of it, every aspect of it. And what she provided and inspired continues. It's a big part of how I live my life, how I partner, how I parent, how I try to be. There's a lot of aspirational aspects in that. And it's a big part of why you've all come to join us today. I will remember her as a big-hearted, incredibly curious, incredibly kind human being who, along with my dad and together with my dad, shaped the human beings that Sabine and I would become and are now. Thanks, Mom.
And
Thanks for everything.
Parents always should do. The children should go better than themselves. You both do. Thank you.
Yeah, that, you're right. And
sometimes I'm right.
yeah, he also absolutely helped me mangle my final line. So thanks, Dad. You got me right in the middle of it. But it was absolutely accurate. No, come on, no stop. We're grateful that you're here. Thank you so much for coming.
But I could add one final line. The core for your mother, for my wife, was family. That was what she lived for. That
Yeah,
was she.
that is true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Friends, hear these words of commendation. On this day, when we remember Sylvia's life, we remember too the words, "You are dust, and to dust we shall return." All of us go down to the dust, yet even at the grave, even on our saddest moments, we celebrate with song that death is not the final word, that hope and music and legacy and love live on, that pain and sorrow and sighing for Sylvia have now ended, and that she is at rest and at peace. Friends, holding on to that hope and that grace and that love, I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join me in this words of comfort of the hymn, Amazing Grace, found in your bulletin. Friends, you may be seated. As we prepare to leave this place, and we prepare to turn from making art with Sylvia and dancing, to remembering that dancing and music and that beauty that she inspired in each one of us. As her art form changed and transformed throughout time, may our lives continue to be transformed by her legacy. As we are amazed by all the many adventures she had during her life, may we remember to be amazed just looking at the small things in our lives and to say yes to the large adventures, to the travel, to the family connections. In just a moment, we will hear the tune, Turn, 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 that reminds us that there are so many seasons in our life, and there were so many seasons in Sylvia's life. As we hear the music of this postlude, we are reminded that our grief is turned to remembrance and love that lives on. of remembrance of a life well lived. So we say, thank you, Sylvia. In a moment after our postlude, you're invited to join the family over in the meeting house and find someone to tell a story about Sylvia's life to that they might not know, something amazing, to share in food and fellowship, and to see pictures that you may have seen a million times or ones that are brand new. So friends, let this music wash over us as we turn this time of remembrance and joy into a time when we get to embody Sylvia's love and sense of adventure and beauty. Amen. celebrate